What's up everyone, back for another beer review, and today is day 5 of the 7th annual 10 Days of Pumpkin here on the channel. The beer I'm reviewing today comes from the Shipyard Brewing Company, and they are headquartered in Portland, Maine, and this is their Smashed Pumpkin, the 2024 release. So this is an Imperial Pumpkin Ale, and on the side of the can it says ale with natural flavors. It comes in at 9% alcohol by volume, 26 IBUs at the time of review. This can is just under 4 months old. So what I have here is what I would consider to be a classic pumpkin beer, especially here in the northeastern / New England region of the US. This is a beer that I had for the first time back in the early 2010s. I want to say it was 2012, maybe 2013. And the last time I had this one was actually 2015, so about 9 years ago. And back then, it came in a 22 fluid ounce bomber bottle. Now it's in a 16 fluid ounce can, so pretty cool to see the evolution of this beer. Now back then, I compared this beer to Southern Tier's Pumpkin, and the reason for that is back then there weren't a ton of Imperial Pumpkin Ales, certainly not here in the Buffalo, New York area, so it was very commonplace for people to pit the two beers against one another. Southern Tier's Pumpkin, 8.6% Imperial Pumpkin Ale, and this is 9%, so it made sense. I always preferred Pumpkin slightly to this one, but I did enjoy this one. Now, that was back when I really liked sweet beers. Southern Tier's Pumpkin is a very sweet beer. This is a little less sweet from what I recall about it. So maybe I'll like this one more nowadays. I don't know. I guess we're going to find out. But I've been wanting to review this one the last couple years for the 10 Days of Pumpkin. It's been a pain in the butt to find. I finally was able to find a single can of it, so I am finally reviewing it. Now, they do brew this one with real pumpkin, even though on their website they don't list like the adjuncts or the spice or anything. They actually have the ingredients as far as the malt and hops go, but they don't specify the spices or if there's real pumpkin, except in the write-up where they say you get some tannins from the pumpkin used in here. So I'm assuming there's real pumpkin in here. And they also mention aromas of nutmeg. So I know there's at least nutmeg in here. I'm sure there's other pumpkin pie spices as well. So we're going to crack this one open. There's a little spiel on the back that I will read at the end if I remember. If not, whatever, should be in the description box. But yeah, really curious about this one. And I'm pouring it into the Southern Tier pumpkin glass because why not? So let's give it a pour, and ooh, I can smell it. Definitely smells like a pumpkin pie for sure. So let's give it a nice pour here. And as you can see, I'm spilling it everywhere like I always do. Shout out to Raining on Your Parade. Yeah. Every other review, baby. Never used to have this issue. Now all of a sudden the cans, you got to push down on them. You got to make sure that it doesn't hit the rim in a certain degree and angle and everything. And fuck that, okay? It's stupid. Anyway, we're going to throw this over here. As far as the beer looks, though, there's a little bit, let's put a little beer on here, clean that up. As far as the beer looks, though, it has this, so holding up to the light, it has more clarity than you're going to see on camera. But yeah, it has a little bit of clarity. You might be able to see the shadow of my hand, but this has a beautiful like copper, kind of like rust, deep amber orange color. Just over a finger of, I would say that's a beige colored head or a very like light khaki or light tan colored head. Very creamy looking. There is some fine particulate I can see floating around in there. It's really cool. It's not going to come off on camera, but in person, it's more, like I said, like a copper rust color up here. And as it goes down, it becomes more of like this sunshiny orange color to where at the bottom here, it's almost like a yellow at the very bottom. So it looks kind of wild, if I'm being honest with you. And in the Southern Tier pumpkin glass, it's hashtag totally not hashtag proper glassware, not at all. So anyway, it looks really nice, really creamy looking head. I think it looks beautiful. Let's get a nose. Okay. So this is almost 4 months old, and this is where I rant about the age of pumpkin beers. And just let it be known that most of these pumpkin beers are either canned or bottled or canned, typically in June or July nowadays. That's typically how, especially from the bigger regional and national breweries. This one was canned in late June. So I'm reviewing this just under 4 months old. Spices have fallen off a little bit in the nose. But this has, for the first time I can really say, a strong vegetal, earthy kind of pumpkin tone. I mentioned in, I think it was, the day 1 review this year, which was Gourd Reaper from Narragansett. I mentioned how a lot of people say, oh, I can smell the pumpkin. And more often than not, what people mean is they can smell the pumpkin pie spices. They smell the cinnamon, the nutmeg, the allspice, the clove, so on and so forth. They're like, oh, that smells like pumpkin, aka pumpkin pie, or the fall season. But pumpkin doesn't usually have a distinct aroma in a lot of these pumpkin ales and pumpkin beers in general, because it just doesn't. I mean, most places will use canned pumpkin, or even if they use roasted pumpkin, it doesn't usually impart a ton of aromatics or flavor. Usually it's for body and mouthfeel. But I'm telling you right now, this has this earthy, vegetal kind of pumpkin nose. Also has a big blast of like caramel, toffee. There's caramelized sugars, brown sugar. And then I am getting more of like a clovey, coriander, ginger spice, like that sharpness that you would get from like a ginger or clove or coriander. It doesn't have the cinnamon and nutmeg and allspice kind of aroma to me anyway. And they say aromas of nutmeg. Not for me, it's more like clove, coriander, ginger, and I don't even know if those spices are in here, but that's kind of what it's smelling like. It smells sweet, has a little bit of booze to it. It is 9%, you kind of expect that. I feel like generic pumpkin ales, and I'm not calling this a generic beer, but if you just say Imperial Pumpkin Ale or just Pumpkin Ale, they don't hide the alcohol as well as so many other styles nowadays. I feel like if you get a big ABV pumpkin ale, it's going to taste like a big ABV pumpkin ale. But this smells really good. It smells just like, it smells like the actual pumpkin pie without the crust, so just the pumpkin pie filling, but it doesn't have as much of a spice character as a pumpkin pie would. It has more of just that filling, the sweetness you'd get from the filling. Again, caramel, toffee, caramelized sugar, brown sugar. It just has that kind of feeling to it. Smells pretty good. Does it smell better than pumpkin, as I was saying? I think pumpkin smells a little bit better. Usually get like the graham cracker crust. Really not getting any kind of crust or like bready like pie crust or anything. So yeah, let's get into this one. Cheers. Pretty fucking good. So yeah, to me, this isn't an entire pumpkin pie. It's more of pumpkin pie filling. So if you're somebody who loves pumpkin pie filling, or like, let's say this, like a pumpkin cheesecake, right? Where you're getting that sweetness, and it's not so much about the pie crust, right? Like a lot of times graham cracker, or you get, a lot of people look for graham cracker, or again, a pie crust in a lot of these pumpkin ales. I'm not getting that as much here. It's more about the pumpkin pie filling. Buying this is like lower side of full, maybe medium full, so 9%, really nice. I think it's a beautiful body for the ABV. I think it's very appropriate. The mouthfeel is fantastic as well. Has a nice, almost approaching moderate carbonation, but it's still smooth. It has a nice creaminess to it, so body mouthfeel, pretty spectacular. While the nose screamed like this is going to be sweet, and it is sweet on the palate, it is not cloying. That's the first thing I'll say about this one. It definitely has a sweet, desserty vibe to it, but it's not cloying. And I'll tell you momentarily why. But forefront, again, caramelized sugars, coffee, toffee, caramel, brown sugar, and more of like a roast, like again, caramelized has a little bit like a toasty kind of roasty quality, maybe even like a toasty kind of like bread character, like a brown bread. Has a lot of just caramelized sugars at the forefront. As it passes through, that earthiness from the pumpkin and that slight vegetal thing hits me midway through the palate. It's not as big as what in the nose. In the nose, it really smelled like you're opening up a pumpkin, like the guts of a pumpkin. You're like, slicing one up to roast it. It had that kind of vegetal, kind of just earthy vibe to it. In the nose, that's dialed down and dialed back a lot. The second half of the palate is where the spices hit. I'm also getting this like vanilla tinge on the side of the palate, which is really cool. But it finishes with this, again, I would say more of like a clove and ginger. Now I get a little bit of nutmeg on the palate, a touch of cinnamon, maybe a touch of allspice, but for the most part, it's clove and ginger for me, with nutmeg being kind of a tertiary player, and maybe cinnamon and allspice if I stretch for it. But it has a beautiful spice characteristic on the finish. And they talk about, again, I saw on the website, they talk about like the tannins from the pumpkin. I do have, and I would mistake this if I was doing it blind, for like an oak tannin, kind of like a very mild oak tannin kind of dryness. And it's probably just the tannins from the pumpkin itself, or maybe the dryness from the alcohol. And that is why it's not cloying. There is a pretty firm dryness here from, you could say, from the spices, the tannin from the pumpkin, or maybe just the alcohol as a whole, but this has a firm dryness. Not really bitter, very mild bitterness, if any. It's more dry than bitter. It does lean sweet, but it's not cloying. Some of you might disagree if you've had this one, like, oh, it's too sweet, because a lot of people have said that about pumpkin over the years. I reviewed that beer a couple different times. Some people are like, oh, it's just too much for me, and I can see that. That beer is definitely sweeter than this, based on, again, my recollection of that beer and this beer back in the day. That was always my impression, and it's still my impression this day. I think pumpkin's a bit sweeter, more intense, more of an entire pumpkin pie stuffed into an Imperial Pumpkin Ale, as opposed to this one, which is more of the pumpkin pie filling. I'm not really getting any graham cracker or any, like, you know, again, pie crust or anything. This is more about the filling. Again, 9%. I can tell it's a boozy beer because of the body and the mouthfeel and the fact that it's a little bit boozy. I would guess at least 8, but I probably would guess 9 to 10%. Like, it has a bigger viscosity to the body and also a little bit of intensity to the flavors. On top of that, I do get a little bit of alcohol astringency or dryness on the back of the palate. What's funny is usually when I say that, I get a big warming in my chest, almost nothing in the chest, maybe a very slight kind of warming, but for the most part, it hides it relatively well. But you still know that this is a bigger beer as a whole. This is better than I remember, if I'm being honest with you, but you have to keep in mind that my palate has changed. All of our palates change over years, right? You still like certain things and you'll continue to like those certain styles and whatnot. For me though, back when I first got into craft beer 15 years ago, I wanted everything sweet. I didn't want any bitterness. I wanted dryness. I wanted everything sweet. Over the years, my palate started demanding some kind of bitterness. And now it's gotten to the point where I like dry and bitter beers. I still want them to be balanced, but I'd rather have a beer lean dry or bitter, or I should say dry and or bitter, than sweet. And I think this is more balanced than, say, Pumpkin from Southern Tier. So I think I enjoy this one a little bit more than Pumpkin from a balance perspective. I do think I like the flavors from Pumpkin more, but I just think the sweetness to that beer and intensity is a little bit overwhelming, where this isn't. I'm going to drink the rest of this. I don't think I'm having any issue with it. Really, really nice. Not my favorite so far. This is day 5. My favorite to date is the Ellicottville. Their barrel-aged, coffee pumpkin stout. This, though, is definitely, I'm going to say this is in second place. So I'm going to try to pour the rest in here, and as I do, I'm going to spill it everywhere. I don't know if there's any goodies at the bottom. I would assume probably not with a beer like this. But anyway, I'm going to give this one a rating. So Smash Pumpkin, the 2024 release from Shipyard, I'm going to go low 4.25 and go 4.15. I like the label, too. Love the color scheme. I love the purple and orange. I just, that screams... holidays, screams Halloween, screams fall to me. So I really like it from that perspective. And I just like the carved pumpkin. They've changed the label quite a few times over the years, but I do think this is a cool label change. I do enjoy it. So 4.15 out of 5. The spiel on the back says, smash the idea of what you thought a pumpkin beer should be. Shipyard Smash Pumpkin is bold and strong, but finishes smooth with notes of caramel and cinnamon. Okay, I would say more like caramel and clove or something like that, but caramel and cinnamon make more sense. But yeah, I mean, that's a very generic write-up, but I would agree. Price point, I paid $3.75 for that can. I picked that up at Aurora Brewworks in East Aurora, New York. Fantastic little bottle shop there. They have a lot of cool beer. You can drink beer on tap in there. And I don't know if they still allow this, but you used to be able to bring in food to eat there. And what the great thing about it is, a couple doors down is Barbell's, which is one of the best restaurants slash bars slash whatever in the Western New York area for wings. Barbell's is up there. The Cajun Honey Butter Barbecue, top tier. If you're ever in East Aurora, get them. Absolutely fantastic. Also, their Sicilian are great. I mean, you can get the regular, buffalo wings as they are, because they are fantastic. But if you're looking for something different, Cajun Honey Butter Barbecue and or the Sicilian. But you can grab them, I think, and just bring them over to Aurora Brewworks and just like eat wings and drink a beer. I mean, is there anything better than that? There's not. But $3.75 for that can, and I believe, I want to say 4 packs for like $14.99 all day, every day. It's very similar in price to Southern Tier here in this area, so that makes sense. And availability, I don't really know Shipyard. They do have a beer finder on the website, so definitely go check it out. I know they get Pretty decent distro. I think they get a little bit down to the south into the Midwest, definitely in the Northeast and New England region. I'm not saying you should see this one if you see Shipyard, but this is their other big, fall seasonal release after their base Pumpkinhead Ale. They also do a barrel-aged version of this. Never had it, never have seen it. I would love to try it at some point. So if anybody has any inside information on the barrel-aged version of this, I would love to review it for next year's 10 Days of Pumpkin. But outside of that, I can recommend this one. I think this is a really good Imperial Pumpkin Ale. Keep in mind, it is a little bit sweeter, although I think it's more balanced than something like pumpkin. And it's more of a pumpkin pie filling than the entire pie crust and graham cracker. So it's not like a 100% pumpkin pie. It's like 80% of a pumpkin pie. But that's okay with me. Yeah, I'm going to shut this one down. That was day 5. We are at the halfway point. I'm loving it. I love the 10 Days of Pumpkin. I know a lot of you out there don't, but hopefully you still follow along. Maybe there is a pumpkin beer out there, that sounds good to you, or maybe one that I've reviewed over the years. Definitely check them out. If you're not a pumpkin beer fan, I get it, but I always say there's at least one beer in every style for somebody, and I have to imagine there's a pumpkin beer out there for somebody who doesn't like pumpkin pie or pumpkin pie spices or pumpkin in general, and I truly do believe that. So, don't give up. If you don't like pumpkin ale, still try them from time to time. You have nothing to lose. Anyway, maybe a couple bucks. Anyway, I'm going to shut this one down. That was day 5. Day 6 is tomorrow, which is Scythe from the Drownlands Brewery, a foeder fermented pumpkin ale. Sign me up. That sounds wild. I can't wait to get into it. So I'm going to shut this one down. Appreciate everybody stopping by for another beer review here on the Beer Patrol. To the next one. Cheers.